we're learning Pathfinder. Let's go ahead and go through classes. So, Pathfinder, we're going to go classes, AON. This is Archives of Nethys. There's one for 1st edition, there's one for 2nd edition. Go to the home, it has a bunch of information, has all the various things you may need along the side here. So, classes and prestige classes. Classes, anybody can take them, assuming they meet the base requirements. For example, monks need to be lawful, barbarians need to be non-lawful, I think. Paladins need to be lawful good. There's some basic requirements like that. Beyond that, anybody can pick them up. There's something also called prestige classes. Prestige classes are much more narrow in their focus. Each have specific requirements. So, for example, we go to Aldori Sword Lord. There'll be feats that are required, and usually skill ranks that are required. Sometimes there's things further. Basically, if you're trying to go into prestige class, you have to meet these prerequisites. And once you do, you can select them. Base classes, you just have to exist and not fail to qualify. So, I'll go ahead and give a brief summary of what all these things do. But think of each class as, this is basically your chassis. This is how you're going to experience combat in the world. Outside of the specific mechanics you have for these classes, you can roleplay them however you want. Traits allow you to pick up various skills, and you can be good at different things. Sometimes you can have different classes that are good at other things. So, for example, your cleric can be more martial focused, can use a weapon, or they could be more spellcasting focused. There's a bunch of different ways to build every one of these characters. However, I'm going to go ahead and give you, first off, my idea of the sliding axis of how combat works. Because you're going to be spending maybe at least half your time in various combat encounters, or let's say initiative encounters, that are going to use your specific class features. There is, on one end of the scale are marshals, and on the other end of the scale are spellcasters. Now, the two things these two different classes do. Marshals are relatively simple. They swing weapons to some degree. They make attacks with a dagger, they make attacks with greatswords, they make attack with bow. It doesn't matter. Generally, that's going to be what they do in combat. So if you're okay, these are generally more simple classes. They can add complexity in various class features, but marshals are going to be focused on usually just dealing damage with some sort of weapon. The complexity, of course, comes in how you want to roleplay the character and the various ways you go about achieving that swing the weapon upon the opponent. Marshals can be a lot of fun. Some people find them quite boring, because a lot of times they're just going to be rolling dice, rolling damage, and that's what they're going to do in combat. Some people can't stand that. Some people find that dull. I'm not one of those people. I personally do enjoy when I roll a bunch of dice and look something and go, yeah, just take 100 damage, and they go, oh, fall over. Can be exciting. However, I do understand why some people might find that a bit dull. On the other end of this scale is spellcasters. Spellcasters are people that don't necessarily cast spells every round, but that is what they're going to be doing a majority of the time. They have a list of pre-selected spells that they have to work with, either as a result of picking them up when they choose their level, or picking them for the day, based on their class and spellbook. But each round, they look at their spellbook, generally ahead of time, so you're not wasting a bunch of time in between turns, and go, this spell seems to be the most suited for this combat, based on how much longer we have left to adventure in the day, and the difficulty of enemies we're encountering. And they cast that spell. Their spells have a wide variety of uses, but that's what they're going to do. The nice thing about that is you can customize spellcasters based on what kind of spells you want to cast, what you plan to do during the day. It gives you a lot of versatility in how you want to approach each encounter, as compared to marshals, who are going to just kind of stab things. Of course, that is a sliding axis. You can be a spellcaster who is also good at martials, or martial disciplines. Sometimes, whether that be casting offensive spells or casting buffs on yourself. You could be a spellcaster who, instead of casting spells in the traditional sense, has a long list of once per day or multiple times per day abilities they can have at their disposal that they're able to take advantage of. It's not a definitive you have to be one or the other or somewhere along this line. It's just kind of a how you approach combat. Are you going to roll dice and do damage, or are you going to have a long list of options you have to choose at any given turn. So, that's over. Let me take a drink, and then we'll get into covering these classes. I normally prefer going through. You know what? Let's go ahead and no, we'll do it here. We'll just go alphabetically. But the thing to note is I'm going to cover just a quick overview of all the classes. If you want to know more, keep an eye out on YouTube. I might make a series over there going over the various classes in more detail. Give them 5 to 10 minutes each, kind of doing that. Now, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Alchemists. They're a spellcaster in a non-traditional sense. Instead of preparing spells from their spellbook, or getting spells from a deity, every day, every morning, they spend time, a minute each, preparing these extracts. Extracts are like miniature potions. Only the alchemist can drink them unless they take a specific feature in which case anybody can drink them. So they effectively prepare limited times per day potions they can hand out or use as appropriate. On top of that, they're int based. They get bonuses based on their int. They're good at throwing various alchemical goods, as it makes sense. They can, I think, do they get brew potions for free? I think they might. But they're an int based class. They also get a feature called bombs, which is a ranged touch attack, basically a ranged consumable you throw, except instead of costing you money, you get limited pool per day. That you throw at enemies and does damage. Relatively easy to hit, does a little bit of splash damage around them. You have to be a little bit careful of your allies. A fun class, specifically because though they don't get access to the highest tier of magic, a lot of their stuff they get is considered buff spells that are unique to personal use. However, alchemists, if they take the infusion discovery so they can share their potions out, their extracts out amongst the party members, allows the big fighter who normally uses a greatsword to transform into a giant T-Rex on occasion. Very fun, very flavorful. I love alchemists. For now, we're going to skip anti-paladin. We'll cover that when we cover paladin. I'll move into arcanist. Arcanist is a mix of sorcerer and wizard. It's considered a hybrid class. It progresses as a sorcerer, so it's a little bit behind wizard. It is considered someone who has some magic in their blood, but also they added on to that intense study of the magic itself. So they have some inherent talent with magic. The study is how they've learned them, is how they're more like wizards in the fact that they've actually attempted to study it, and they just didn't go, oh, my great-great-great-grandfather had a evening with a dragon, and a few generations out I pop, and lo and behold, I can use dragon magic. And instead, that sort of similar thing happened, but they went, I like this magic thing, I'll go to college. They're an int-focused class. They like having charisma because a lot of their features relate to it, though it's not a requirement. Beyond that, they can really use any kind of magic they want, that they tend to specialize. They also have something called discoveries. Alchemists also have special discoveries. I forgot to mention that. Arcanists have discoveries that allow them to specialize in various regions. Fun class. Then we have Barbarian and Unchained Barbarian. A quick overview of various Unchained features. Unchained is specifically a minor or somewhat major redesign of a class to make it more in line with the overall balance of the game. Or they're bringing that up or down. Barbarian, I mean, they're exactly what everybody knows what a barbarian is. They are they're usually big, usually strong, and they fly into a rage, getting bonuses to themselves, and hitting things harder as a result of that, and being harder to take down as a result of that. Barbarians also come with rage. Excuse me. Barbarians are also generally faster. They come with rage powers, which are limited. So once you start your rage, you may use these rage powers. They allow you to use various either permanent bonuses, maybe some bonus to defenses, maybe some bonuses to offenses, or limited times per day abilities. Like once per rage, you can roll twice and take the higher on this sort of thing. It's more flavor than just I hit things. The difference between normal barbarian and unchained barbarian, there's a differing list of rage powers they have access to. For the most part, your GM will probably allow you to use either one back and forth. The major difference, however, it comes in what their rage bonus provides. The original Barbarian provides strength and constitution. As a result, there's a if you don't want to be a strength-based barbarian, you may struggle. Also, there is a problem with sudden barbarian death syndrome. It's a common condition that affects all barbarians. You need to be very aware of it because your raging is something you have to do actively. If you fall unconscious by going beneath 0, you would all of a sudden stop raging. However, the injuries you had don't disappear. So if you were, say, 5th level and you got plus 10 con and you went unconscious, you may just suddenly die because all of a sudden your con score or your hit points are way more negative than they were before. There is a feat, of course, that helps you overcome it, but that could be a serious issue. So Unchained Barbarian, instead of giving you bonuses to strength and con, gave you a bonus to hit and a bonus and some temporary HP. So that is a more general. It allows you to be more generally wide-rangingly good. There's some specific stuff that is good for barbarians, some specific weapon enchantments. Furious being a one to keep an eye on, but no longer courageous, which means barbarians have gone down a peg in terms of their usability. But I love barbarians, one of my favorite martial classes, and the rage powers give you a lot of options to do with. Now, bards. Unlike a lot of future systems, bards are not full casters. However, the memes exist for bards for a reason. They're charisma-based class. They cast spells, not as good as wizards and whatnot, but they do get extensive spell casting, up to 6th level spells. On top of that, they get something called bardic music, which is limited rounds per day. Usually you're not going to run into issues if you got a decent charisma score, but it's something you have to be a little bit mindful of if you're planning to adventure for an extended period of combats. They can provide bonuses to... Usually the one you're going to do is Inspire Courage, which provides a bonus to hit damage, and I think saves against fear, which is less relevant. But then you can also stop other people from using song-based magic. You can provide bonuses to skill checks. You can provide bonuses to this and that based on what kind of bard you are. Some archetypes allow you to trade that sort of thing out. Very, very good in that regard. They also have Versatile Performance, which allows them to use their Perform skill in place of 2 other skills based on the perform skill you choose. So Oratory gives you a certain 2, Dance gives you other 2. You unlock more and more as you get higher and higher in level. It's good in that you can specialize in kind of one skill, and it gets really easy to get really ridiculous at some things that you're not normally good at being, like Sense Motive with a Versatile Performance is really easy to get for some ridiculously high degree. Downside being you only get them sporadically, 2nd level and every 4 levels there. Regardless, bards are known as one of the best buffing classes in all of Pathfinder, a sentiment to which I very much agree to. They're also good as enchanters. They get early access, well, not early access, but they progress similarly in terms of enchanting as a wizard might. So when a normal wizard gets certain spells, a bard would get it. However, it just happens to be a lower spell level to make up for that fact. I love bards. In a more martially focused party, they are really good. Because the party can take advantage of your bonuses. You start your song and you can maintain it for the rest of combat. There's some broken stuff they can do as well. But a very, very solid class, and I don't know about one of my favorite, but it's a good... The party will never go wrong, no matter what their balance is, when adding a bard. Okay, a Blood Rager. This is another hybrid class. This is a sorcerer plus barbarian. Normally, barbarians can't do anything smart or well, not necessarily smart or intelligent. They aren't able to do many actions or take extensively thoughtful things during a raid. Our Blood Ragers are able to sidestep that and do a much more widespread array of actions. They also have access to very limited spellcasting, up to 4th level. And eventually, once they hit the mid-levels, I think 10 or 11, once they start a rage, they're able to automatically cast a spell as a free action or a swift action. Regardless, they're able to cast a low-level spell to buff them as they go into a rage. So if you want to go into a rage and get yourself bigger, go into a rage and make a bunch of images of yourself to make yourself harder to hit, they're able to do that sort of thing. In exchange, they do have some rage powers of the barbarian. They get a much more limited selection of them. Brawler is another class. I don't know if it's a hybrid class or not. Let me quickly take a look. Nope, this is just AC. That is ACG. It's a fighter monk. Okay. So, Brawler, as regards to what they do, they fight unarmed or with a special selection of weapons, similar to a monk might do. They get bonus feats, like a fighter might do. However, their specialty is in terms of doing combat maneuvers, which are special actions you may take in place of making attacks, or as a special kind of action, grappling, tripping, disarming, shoving, that sort of thing. Those are considered combat maneuvers. Brawlers are quite good at it, and also they have a special feature called martial flexibility. Normally, as you level up, you pick these things called feats over on the left, Feats. So, of course, the joke is always pick a left foot and then a right foot, and then you can go from there. Martial flexibility allows them to, as some sort of action, getting quicker as they level up. They may pick any feat that they meet the prerequisite for, and for a limited period of time, use that feat. That is very good. Well, situationally good. Usually, you have one you're going for, but it allows versatility in their builds. So, say you're fighting a swarm, there's a feat that allows you to hit swarms for a small amount of damage. That can be good. Say you need to grapple this guy and you're not a grappler. Hey, I'm capable of grappling. The versatility is there, and they've got some fun archetypes they can do. Really, you're kind of going for them if you've got some sort of martial. If they get bonus feats, they're good at maneuvers. That's the kind of build that generally goes through as a brawler. Cavalier. Cavalier is a fighter on horseback, or some sort of beast back, is generally how it's considered. You don't have to ride a beast, however, that is the expectation. A lance, you get bonuses for using, for charging, but beyond that, you also have a feature called Tactician. Tactician is, you take one of the teamwork feats you qualify for, teamwork feats being a specific subsection of feats that only give you bonuses if your allies or someone you're working with also has those feats. However, they tend to be very powerful if that is the case. However, considering most parties or most people are unwilling or don't have the available feats to pick up teamwork feats, they're not nearly as good. Cavalier says, "Okay, raise up my banner. Everybody within 30 feet of me now has this teamwork feat for a period of time." That could be really cool. The problem you're going to run into with Cavaliers is twofold. One, using large mounts can be a very difficult endeavor in its small and enclosed environment. Specifically, the adventure we're going to be going to is the Tombs of Osiria. They're going to be underground and confined spaces. Charging on the horseback is not going to be conducive to this sort of environment. Also, the Tactician feature is a standard action that you must use that is the last, I think, like a minute. So while you can pump it before you open a door, you're limited in times per day, and you don't want to activate it at the beginning of combat, because if you're not charging in the first round of combat, the enemy might have already come to you, in which case you've lost out on some of your features. So, Cavalier can be weak in that regard. However, there is nothing saying you have to be a guy on horseback charging with a lance. You could be a halfling riding a spider. That means a small size creature, medium sized mount, no problems with moving around the room. You could shoot arrows on horseback. You could give bonuses to climb. You could ride something flying. All sorts of things you can do with Cavalier. They also have something considered an order. Not quite a paladin oath, but generally they follow a set of ideas. They're generally lawful aligned. Or they're generally lawful aligned. So they can break that. That gives them bonuses. They can challenge based on their various the orders they choose. It's fun. I've not played them extensively, so I don't have a huge amount to say about them because of the limitations that I have listed. But if you're looking to be kind of that traditional knight in armor sort of character, Cavaliers can be a lot of fun. Finally, we move on to clerics. Clerics are a whole. Their class features are very simplistic. They have spellcasting, 9th level spellcasting. They earn new spell levels at every odd spell, first, third, fifth, and so on. They access from the cleric spell list, a pretty awesome spell list, lacking somewhat in terms of offensive spellcasting. Has some of the best defensive and buff spellcasting in the game, though. Outside of maybe Bard, they're the best buffing They're some of the best busting classes in the game. Of course, they're defined by their deity. Your deity, you have to be within one step in terms of alignment. Each deity will give you a set of domains. Domains contain various options that expand your spell list and also give you certain powers you have access to. Beyond that, they also have the channel energy class feature. If you worship a good deity, you channel positive. If you worship an evil deity, you channel negative. Channeling positive means within it or around you, you heal every you do positive energy, healing everybody in that area. Or if you choose to instead harm things, you can harm the undead. Inverse that for negative channeling, harms the living, heals undead. Simplistic in their, it doesn't take a lot to build. You might get a little bit worried in terms of spell selection. However, I am going to take this opportunity to talk about guides. Pathfinder guides are spectacular. Every class has them. Some prestige classes, every base class has at least a couple. Some prestige, excuse me. Some prestige classes have them as well. Just search up Pathfinder Cleric Guide, Pathfinder Fighter Guide, whatever class you happen to be interested in. Search up a guide for it. Look for one of the Google Doc that's usually a little bit more recent. It'll have everything you need. A little bit min-maxy in some regards, but it's especially for things like spell selection and feat selection, it can help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls that some people may fall into when they're first starting to play Pathfinder. Clerics very open-ended, oftentimes defined by their deity, but can be a lot of fun to play. I've played them extensively, my friends have played them extensively. However, one thing to note, clerics, and a lot of people within Pathfinder, healer is not a role in Pathfinder. People are capable of healing magic. That does not make them a healer. There's no MMO healer required in encounters. The best way to deal with it, or the best way to heal your party members, is to stop the enemy from hurting you. So as a cleric, yes, you're going to occasionally need to, if someone's on the verge of death, throw some healing into them. Or maybe if one of your party members could also do something similar by feeding them a potion. So it should not fall down to one person in the party, unless they specifically built for that and are okay with it, to be the quote-unquote healer. So, channeling positive is nice. You don't need to do it. You don't need to do it extensively. You can just wait until you're out of combat, pump a little bit of healing into your party, and then move on. So, again, best way to heal your party, stop the enemies from hurting you. Because the enemy is able to do, like, 30 damage per round, then stopping that 30 damage per round is much easier than healing 30 damage. Next up, we've got Druid. Once again, a very common class throughout various systems. Druids are nature casters. They have their own spell list. They're considered divine casters as well, similar to clerics. Through their connection with natures, they're able to gain various class features. Usually spellcasting is their big thing, and then they also have something called Nature's Bond. They either choose a domain, specifically a nature domain. This can be terrain, this can be a specific subset, this can be an animal domain, as we talked about earlier with like vulture and crocodile. Or they choose an animal companion from a big list of animal companions. I generally prefer animal companions, but that's just me. I love having animal companions. I think they're the best. However, if you are in a big party, the number of animal companion or the number of just things on the board might get a bit much, in which case I might recommend avoiding that. But druids, a lot of fun. You can build them more martially inclined. You can build them more spellcasty focus. They also have a feature called Wild Shape, which allows them to transform into animals of various sizes and later on maybe elementals and plants. However, it works a little differently than a lot of other systems. Instead of taking the stats of the creature, you take bonuses on your own stats. So if you plan to be a shape-shifting druid, you have to invest in strength. You have to invest in con and dexterity. You don't just get those automatically. So if you're planning to play a little bit more martially focused, spellcasting is going to suffer a little bit. But druids also have a very extensive buffing spell list, so they don't feel too bad. I enjoy druids in all form. Probably my single favorite class. Probably one of my most played classes, if nothing else. Played every different variety. Have fond memories of playing druids. Next up, you got fighter. This, I mean, your typical fighter. They fight. There's very little in terms of their class features that they get. The thing that they get, though, is an extensive amount of bonus feat. at first level and then at every even level, they get a bonus feat. Generally, characters only get a feat every odd level. Fighters get, if you take full fighter, you get a feat every single level as you level up. So they're defined a lot more by their feats than their class features. They do eventually get armor training and weapon training, so they get bonuses for using certain armors and weapons that they've chose to focus on. But if you're planning to take fighter, usually you're more often going to be looking at various feat change. You need a bunch of different feats to do this or that, so it's more important to know what you're going that way than picking a fighter. It's also a very decent 1 or 2 dip, depending on how you want to do prestige classes. They can be good. Next up is gunslingers. Yes, they're using guns. Early guns, muskets and whatnot, muzzle-loading muskets and pistols and whatnot. However, they are using guns. A lot of GMs will not allow you to play gunslinger. However, there is a specific archetype in gunslinger that is considered that is a bolt ace. They use crossbows and stuff instead, and they are very, very good at it. That usually GMs don't have a problem with. However, gunslingers, as they stand, effectively throw money at throw money away. So they don't have to worry about hitting armor class. Armor class is generally the defensive value. Armor class is a pretty common term now. Most people should be aware of it. It gets pretty high. However, gunslingers within their first range increments, so 20 feet if they're using pistols, or like 40 feet if they're using other things, they can extend it with certain features. Go against touch armor class. So instead of having to actually break through your armor, their bullets automatically do, and all they have to do is touch you, which that number is usually less than 20. Somewhere in the 10 to 15 range for most creatures, barring those really, really dodgy ones. When I say they throw money at a problem, I do mean they throw money at a problem. Every single time they make an attack, it costs somewhere between 1 to 6 gold. It's expensive. However, being able to hit so easily makes them quite powerful. Most players, I mean, people don't like gunslingers in terms of using guns. Beyond that, the class has a number of features called deeds. Deeds are special things you can do with your actions. You can, like, blast open locks with your guns. You can reload it quickly. Gun jams or has other problems. That guns are all sorts of wacky. There's problems with them. But they have deeds they can do. They can get defensive bonuses depending on taking certain actions. It can be a fun class, but I'm not a huge fan of using guns because, first off, I hate spending money like that. And also, I just find them a little bit unbalanced in terms of gameplay. The game assumes you're going to be fighting against normal AC, fighting against touch AC so regularly is a bit much. Now, Hunter. Hunter is another hybrid class. This is a druid/ranger hybrid. Hunter specialize around using the animal companion. Both ranger and druid can get an animal companion. Ranger's a little bit less so. However, they are more martially inclined. I think they get limited spell casting up to maybe 4th level, I think. A little bit delayed. However, they also have class features which give bonuses to their animal companion. Should you not be using an animal companion, your animal companion die, you can get those features instead. I mean, I don't know a lot about hunters. I haven't really played one, never been all that drawn to the class before. Might look into it. Could be a good opportunity here to do one. But just know you're really focused on your animal companion and you fighting alongside your animal companion. So they get bonuses. I think they get teamwork feats that they can use and automatically give to their animal companion. It's a if you're looking for that sort of companionship bond thing and you're looking for something a little bit more martial focused than the druid, Hunter can be a good way to go. Now, Inquisitor. These are people related to a deity. Of course, similar to Cleric, they have to follow a deity and get some of their class features are limited in selection based on the deity they follow and their alignment. However, instead of being a spellcaster-focused one, they are focused in hunting down various enemies. They have class features that allow them to automatically, after a few rounds, detect alignment of creatures, barring, of course, if enemies have obscured that. They get options to give their weapons or defenses bonuses. That's a bit versatile depending on what you're facing. They get spell casting based off the cleric. No, Inquisitors have their own list. They choose spells as they level up. I think they're a spontaneous caster. They have a spell list they pick as they level up, and then times per day they can cast that. They can do some really, really nice damage as well, because they get automatic Bane to make their weapons really good against specific creatures. But as opposed to having to choose a creature when you're buying a weapon, for rounds per day, they can automatically apply that. I mean, it's kind of a I mean, it's a cleric if you want to if you're more martial focused and want to focus on hunting creatures a bit more, or if you just enjoy swinging weapons. Because clerics can sometimes struggle, inquisitors have give themselves some really nice bonuses. War priests are somewhat similar in that regard, focusing a little bit on different things. Then we have investigators. Investigators are another hybrid class. What are I think they're a rogue alchemist. Considered. Let me alchemist rogue. Yes. Okay. Similar to alchemist, they get access to extracts. Not. I think they only go. They're much more limited in terms of their extracts than an alchemist. However, they are a skill monkey. Skill monkey being a blanket term of characters that are focused on using skills exceedingly well. They can get some discoveries. They have some special stuff they can do. They can provide. They can get their intelligence. They're an intelligence-based character, of course. Uh, Before I go any further, let's quick go over various options. Arcanist int base with some charisma. Barbarians usually strength unchained, can be either. Bards are charisma, sometimes using some sort of strength or dex, depending on how you want to play. Blood Ragers usually strength, a little charisma. Brawler usually strength, though can go dex based. Cavaliers are usually strength, again, can go dex based. Usually a little bit of charisma, just based on some of how they play. Clerics are wisdom based, however, they sometimes focus on charisma to do channeling well, and then, of course, can be martial focused. Druids, once again, wisdom focused character, can be martial focused with direct dex or strength should they choose to. Fighters can be either dex or wisdom or dex or strength focused generally, depending on the style you're going. Gunslingers are dex based because they get dex to hit and then eventually damage with their guns and various features. Hunters require a little bit of wisdom for spellcasting and then strength or dex based on the type of character you're playing. Inquisitors are usually a martial focus against strength or dex, enough wisdom to cast their spells, sometimes more wisdom if they want to be a little more casting focused. Investigators are very int focused because a bunch of their features are based on using your intelligence bonus. And then, of course, they do have generally to go dex or strength based, so they can do a little bit of fighting should they need to. Uh, but again, one thing, the downside of investigators is yes, being very good at skills can be useful. Problem I have found, especially when delving into adventure paths and pre-made content, once you start getting up to the higher levels, maybe 7, 8, 9, and beyond, the writers don't have a great grasp on what is considered a really hot or a difficult or non-difficult skill. So a DC 25 skill check, that sounds pretty high, pretty difficult. The highest an average person can get is like a 20, assuming they're just kind of average at their stat. So it's beyond the realm of an average human. However, at 9th level, you have 9 skill ranks. Plus 3 for a class skill, that's already 12. So assuming you have at least plus 3 to your skill, you can take 10 on it. Taking 10 is a special act. So on average, you're going to make that roll. So it can be difficult sometimes to... I've not delved deep enough into Investigator to have a fully formulated opinion. Just know they're ridiculously good at skills, and they have some niche uses in a lot of other cases. Now, kineticists. Kineticists are a weird and somewhat half-baked. I have a friend who loves kineticists. They're his favorite classes. He's played tons of them. I've played a kineticist in the past. So have a couple of my other friends in various times, one-shots and whatnot. They pick an element, or a couple later down the line. They have infusion, and then they have different features they can use based on it. Every couple of levels, they pick either like utility abilities, they get bonuses to blasting people, but their big special thing is they get a kinetic blast, which is a blast based on their element they choose, and make an attack roll into scaling damage. Starts with a d6, then eventually every odd level it gets an extra d6, so it continues to scale. But similar to magic, they can empower it in different ways. They can maximize it, they can empower it so it does half again damage, so it does max damage, so on and so forth. However, as opposed to using a skill list, they take burn, which is non-lethal damage, effectively lowering their max HP pool for the day to do these sort of things. So they have great burst damage if you build them right, and they have cool utility in what their features they can do. For example, air kineticists can fly, earth kineticists can make like walls and glide under the ground, fire kineticists can create lava pools, and get all sorts of things. Then, of course, hybrid between them. You can get like lava kineticist or smoke kineticist and whatnot. Really, really cool. However, they're very beyond just the basic blast they have. They can be somewhat hindered by their staying power in terms of big fights because they have to reduce their max HP. They're a little bit safe, of course, because it's non-lethal damage, but it's also somewhat half-baked. There's not as much support as a class really needs to get off the ground, but they can be a lot of fun if you're really looking to do something a little different as a marshal. Because still, they're going to spend a lot of their days just making attack rolls and rolling damage. However, the utility of it gives you a little bit more of a spellcaster, the essence of a spellcaster, without going too far off the deep end in that regard. Thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Feel free to follow links down below if you want to see some of my content, and I will see you all next time.